All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
Well, today we're looking into something that I think a lot of us can relate to, at least on some level. It's all about those little things about American culture that might seem a little, well, odd to people visiting from other countries.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Those quirks that make you raise an eyebrow and go, wait, really?
Exactly. And we've got some great material to work with today, including a Quora user who didn't hold back on his criticisms of the U.S., like, at all.
Oh, someone who really laid it all out there.
He did not sugarcoat it. And then we've got another post from someone who had a pretty hilarious culture clash moment, all because of coffee.
Coffee. Ah, it's got to be good.
Oh, it's classic.
Yeah.
So let's start with the critic, shall we? His name is Sith Dowell, and he posted on Quora about all the things he found appalling about living in America.
Appalling, huh? That's pretty strong.
Yeah, he didn't pull any punches. And one of his main points was this idea that in America, everything is monetized.
Everything is monetized. I mean, I guess that's a common perception, right?
Yeah, and he used tipping culture as a prime example. He called it offensively entitled, like it's just assumed that you're going to tip, even if the service is mediocre.
Right, and not tipping can actually make you the bad guy.
Exactly. He even said that not tipping for bad service can actually make you look worse than the person who provided the bad service.
Interesting. I can see how that would be jarring for someone coming from a culture where tipping isn't the norm.
Absolutely. In a lot of places, the service charge is just included in the bill, or tipping isn't expected at all.
Right. It's just part of the cost.
So imagine coming to America and suddenly having to factor in an extra, I don't know, 15, 20% on top of everything.
Yeah, it can definitely add up, especially when you consider things like tipping at the coffee shop, at the bar. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. And Dell's point about everything being monetized, it really gets at something deeper about American culture, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a strong emphasis on individual responsibility here, the idea of working for every dollar you earn.
And that can sometimes create a culture where even basic services are seen as transactions rather than acts of hospitality.
Yeah, almost like a business deal instead of a friendly exchange.
Right. But Dell didn't just stop at tipping. He had some pretty strong opinions about safety in America too.
Oh, like what?
Well, this is a direct quote. He said, "The police are ready to shoot you to death at the drop of a hat."
Wow. Okay, that's a bit extreme, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but it does reflect a perception that exists in some parts of the world.
Right, a fear of police brutality.
Exactly. And statistically speaking, the U.S. does have a higher rate of police shootings compared to a lot of other developed countries.
True. And that's a really complex issue with a lot of historical and social factors at play.
It really is. But, before we get too serious, Dowell also had some lighter commentary on American food.
Oh. What did you think of the cuisine?
Well, he called it low quality and flavorless. He said Americans only get to choose between salty or sweet.
So basically just processed food and sugary treats?
Pretty much. And there's definitely a stereotype about American food being all about fast food and portion sizes.
Right. Like quantity over quality.
Exactly. And it's funny because his salty or sweet comment, it made me think of America's obsession with pumpkin spice everything.
Oh yeah, pumpkin spice lattes, pumpkin spice cookies, pumpkin spice candles. It's a whole thing.
It really is. But then Dowell throws this curveball at us. He mentions, and I quote, toxic waste in open-air pools.
What? Toxic waste in pools?
Yeah, I know, right? Sounds crazy.
So is that a real thing?
Well, unfortunately, it can be. There have been instances where industrial waste has been, improperly stored, and then it overflows during heavy rain.
Oh, wow. That's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's definitely not something you see on those glossy travel brochures.
Not exactly the image they want to project.
Nope. But it is a reminder that even in a developed nation like the U.S., there are still some serious environmental issues that need to be addressed.
For sure. And those issues, they often stem from complex political and economic factors.
Absolutely. Okay, so one more thing Dal touched on that I thought was interesting was this idea of America's fetishization of the military.
The fetishization of the military. I mean, I guess there's definitely a strong sense of patriotism here, a lot of respect for the armed forces.
Yeah, for sure. And you see it everywhere, from the thank you for your service stickers on cars to the big military displays at sporting events.
Right. It's very much ingrained in the culture.
It is. And that level of reverence for the military, it might seem unusual in other parts of the world.
Especially in countries that have different historical experiences with war, or where questioning military spending is seen as perfectly normal.
Exactly. But in the U.S., it can sometimes feel like you're stepping on sacred ground if you criticize the military.
It's almost taboo to question anything related to it.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of that. But enough doom and gloom for now. Let's lighten things up a bit.
Okay, I'm ready for a change of pace.
Remember I mentioned that Quora post about the coffee culture clash?
Oh.
Let's talk about that.
Oh yeah, bring on the coffee drama.
So this guy, Dražen Pečnik, he's from Croatia, where coffee is serious business.
I've had Balkan coffee as strong stuff.
Oh yeah. He describes growing up with this boiled coffee that's like very black, very thick, very strong, and has coffee foam on top.
Wow. That sounds intense.
He even said you would not be able to see the bottom of the cup.
That's a whole other level of coffee.
I know. It's like a ritual over there. It's not just a drink. It's a social thing, a way of life.
Yeah, like a slow, deliberate process. You savor it.
So picture this. He comes to America and he orders a large coffee, right?
Expecting something equally potent.
Of course. And what does he get? This giant paper cup filled with what he describes as thin tea.
Oh no, the disappointment.
He even said it tasted like someone just washed very dirty hands in hot water.
Ouch. That's harsh, but I can almost imagine it.
And the funniest part is that he grew up watching Westerns.
Westerns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was expected to find that same, strong, rugged cowboy coffee he'd seen in the movies.
Like brewed over an open fire, strong enough to wake the dead.
Exactly. And he's just baffled. He's like, where did it all go?
That's hilarious. It's like a classic case of pop culture expectations versus reality.
Totally. So the question is, what did happen to that strong cowboy coffee? And why is American coffee so well thin?
That's a good question. It seems like American coffee has gone through quite an evolution.
It really has.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll have to explore further when we come back. But for now, let's take a break and reflect on these initial observations. What surprised you the most? We'll be back in a bit to dig deeper into this fascinating topic.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to mull over some of those initial observations about American culture.
Yeah, it's amazing how a fresh perspective can really make you re-examine things you might take for granted.
It really is. And speaking of fresh perspectives, Dowell had a few more criticisms that I thought were worth exploring further.
Well, yeah. Like what?
Well, one that stood out to me was his comment about everything in America being low quality, like it's a disposable culture.
Oof, that's a pretty harsh statement, but
yeah.
I mean, is there any truth to it?
Well, America is known for its innovation, its technological advancements, right? But there's also this reputation for mass production, for products that are designed to be replaced quickly.
Yeah, like we're constantly upgrading and discarding things. It's a fast-paced cycle.
It is. And Dowell's observation kind of makes you think about the downsides of that consumerist mindset.
Right. Like do we really need that new iPhone every year?
Yeah.
Or are we just caught up in this cycle of always wanting the latest and greatest thing?
It's a good question to ask ourselves. And it's not just about material possessions either. Dowell also criticized what he called the fetishization of the military and the police force in America.
Yeah, I remember he even seemed bothered by the phrase, "Thank you for your service." Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, it's certainly true that phrase has become like a standard expression of gratitude towards military personnel in the U.S.
Right. It's almost like a reflex. But I guess in other cultures, expressing such overt admiration for the military might not be as common.
Especially in countries with different historical experiences with war, or where there's maybe more skepticism toward military institutions.
Yeah, I can see that. But Dowell's criticism, it does raise a point. Like does this unquestioning reverence for the military sometimes prevent us from having more critical discussions about its role in society?
Right. Does it make it harder to talk about the costs and consequences of military action?
It's something to think about for sure. And it kind of ties into another one of Dowell's points that I found interesting, his observation that Americans have a general complete ignorance about the rest of the planet and a lack of curiosity about other cultures.
That's a stereotype that's been around for a while, but there might be some truth to it.
Yeah, when you consider how many Americans don't own a passport or haven't traveled outside the country, it's kind of eye-opening.
It is, but I also think it's important to acknowledge that there is a growing awareness of global citizenship and intercultural understanding, especially among younger generations.
Right, like the internet and social media have really helped connect people across borders and expose them to different perspectives.
Absolutely, it's like we're slowly starting to realize that our own story is just one chapter in this much bigger, more complex human narrative.
That's a great way to put it. But I think it's important to remember that Dowell's perspective, it's just one perspective. And while he might have had some negative experiences, there are countless others who've had positive and enriching experiences in the U.S.
Of course, it's all about perspective, isn't it?
Exactly. No culture is perfect.
Yeah.
Every country has its strengths and weaknesses. It's good and bad.
Right. It's not about judging or ranking cultures, but rather about understanding and appreciating all the different experiences that make our world so rich and diverse.
I love that. Speaking of diverse experiences, remember Dražen Petnik and his epic coffee quest?
Oh yeah, Petnik, that was a classic.
His story was such a great example of how something as simple as a cup of coffee can be, like a window into cultural differences.
Totally. And how those differences can lead to some pretty hilarious misunderstandings.
I mean, he was so let down when he ordered a large coffee in America and got what he described as thin tea. He was expecting something much stronger, like the thick, potent coffee he was used to back home in Croatia.
It's like his dreams of finding that rugged cowboy coffee were totally shattered.
They were.
Yay.
But it does make you think about how American coffee has changed over time.
It really has. I mean, it's gone from that strong, bold brew of the frontier days to this much lighter, more approachable style of coffee.
Right, and that shift, it kind of reflects the changing pace of life in America too.
Totally. Like from the rugged individualism of the frontier to the fast-paced, consumer-driven society we have today.
So what happened? What caused that change? Why did American coffee go from bold and intense to thin, as Petnik put it?
Well, there are a lot of factors at play. As America industrialized and urbanized, coffee consumption shifted from being a necessity to being more of a casual beverage, something people drank throughout the day.
So it was less about that quick burst of energy and more about just enjoying the taste.
Exactly. And with mass production and consumerism on the rise, coffee became, well, less about quality and tradition and more about convenience and affordability.
So that explains the popularity of drip coffee makers and those big chains serving up giant cups of light coffee.
Okay.
It's coffee for the masses.
It is, but it's also worth noting that American coffee culture has been experiencing a bit of a renaissance lately.
Oh yeah. Tell me more.
Well, there's this growing movement towards specialty coffee with a focus on quality, flavor, and sustainability. So
maybe there's hope for Petnik yet. He might find a cup that would actually satisfy him.
I think he would. It would be great to see his reaction to a perfectly pulled espresso or a meticulously brewed pour over.
I bet it would really show him that even in a culture known for its mass production and homogenization, there's still room for diversity and a return to those traditional methods. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious what stood out to you the most so far. What's been the most surprising or insightful takeaway?
Wow, we've really gone deep on this one, haven't we? From harsh criticisms to those funny coffee moments, it's been quite a ride.
It has, and I think what really strikes me is how much perspective matters. Like depending on where you're coming from, American culture can look totally different.
It's true. Like I don't know, have you ever seen those optical illusions where it's like, is it a vase or is it two faces?
Right.
It's kind of like that, right? What you see depends on your point of view. Exactly. And that's something I hope our listeners take away from this. Like there's no one right answer when it comes to understanding a culture.
It's about embracing the complexity, right?
It is. And realizing that our own backgrounds and experiences, they all color how we see the world.
They do. And one thing we've touched on is that culture isn't static. It's always changing.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, remember Nick and his quest for that strong cowboy coffee?
Yeah.
It's funny because it shows how tastes evolve over time.
Yeah, and how what we think we know about a culture might not actually reflect what's happening right now.
Exactly. So I guess the question is, what's next for American culture? What's going to change the most in the coming years?
That's a big question, but it's an exciting one too, right?
It is, and it's a question that we can all be a part of answering, not just as observers, but as participants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like get out there, talk to people from different backgrounds, explore new places, try different foods, challenge those assumptions.
And be open to the unexpected.
Yes, because that's where the real magic of cultural discovery happens, when you're pushed outside of your comfort zone.
It might feel a little uncomfortable at times.
It might, but it's always worth it.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Embrace the discomfort, be open to new perspectives, and remember that understanding culture, it's a lifelong journey.
And on that note, we've reached the surface of our deep dive into American culture. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these different perspectives with us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep those minds open, and keep diving deep.
This is The Deep Dive, signing off.